welcome to Sacred Mindshift Circle. I'm your host, Dahlia Dever Donalds. And today our guest is Leo Tonkin, and he is the leading voice and pioneer of the salt therapy industry in the world of halotherapy and natural wellness. As the founder and chairman of the Salt Therapy Association and the CEO of Salt Chamber, he has spent years helping bring awareness to the potential benefits of salt therapy for respiratory health, relaxation, and overall well-being. Through his work, Leo has helped educate both wellness professionals and families about the growing interest in salt rooms and holistic healing environments. Today, we'll be discussing the science behind halotherapy, its impact on children and respiratory health, and how ancient natural practices are finding their place again in modern wellness conversations. Hello, how are you, Leo?
Good, thank you, and thanks for having me on your podcast.
Thank you for coming. I really was interested in this topic. I saw maybe a couple of videos about it. A lot of it was related to how it could help children, which we'll go into later. But first,
Sure.
Just tell me a little bit about how you began working in this industry in halotherapy.
Sure. It was about 15 years ago that I met somebody who was talking about halotherapy. They were from Europe, and the benefits of it over in Europe, where this was really evolved from back in the day underneath the ground throughout Eastern Europe, are salt mines, salt caves. And in Poland in particular, there was a natural healing environment being down underground with the salt particles in the air. And so when I heard about it, I thought, wow, I never heard of something like that, right? That you go into a room now that at the time there was only about 10 facilities in all of North America. So I was fascinated by it. As a kid, I had allergies. I was taking a lot of medicine over the years, right? And I was just curious about it. So I started a deep dive into it and started to look at the research. And I was pretty amazed that this had a lot of science behind it. In fact, in some countries in Europe, it's considered a medical treatment. So while in the United States, we consider it more on the wellness side because it's not controlled by the FDA like other supplements, it really is more of a natural modality here in the United States. In Europe, it's still being practiced by a lot of medical professionals. It's covered by different health companies. And so at that time, I started to look at the market here in the United States, and boom, we started to be in the business, started to educate people. We started working with different spas where they are already introducing modalities. You have sauna, you have steam, you had cold plunge, you had all these different combinations of different modalities. Why not salt therapy? And so based on the science, based on the market, we started to educate people, and today, 15 years later, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of places throughout North America and around the world that are offering salt therapy to their guests, customers, and patients all around. So still a lot of people don't know about it, right? So there's still a huge amount of education and awareness, and that's why I appreciate being on your show, because the more people that can find out about this, the better off that we all are.
So tell me a little bit about what is halotherapy. I mean, we obviously know it has to do with salt and all that, but how does it affect the body, and how does it work scientifically and physiologically?
Yeah, great question. Well, what we often refer to salt therapy as halotherapy. Halo is the Greek word for salt. And so the premise of halotherapy, it's about dry salt, not wet salt. Most people are familiar with a saline solution. Most people are familiar with a neti pot. As a kid and still today, I gargle with salt water. It's something that the body needs. But when you are breathing in dry salt particles, there's three basic characteristics of dry salt as opposed to wet salt. A lot of people compare it to being by the ocean, right, and there's salt in the air, but that's still a moist salt particle. It's evaporating, and it's coming from technically dirty water, right? But still people feel a whole different vibe. They feel different when they're being by the ocean, and the negative ions from the crashing of the waves and all of that. This is distinct by being dry. And why dry? Well, if you ever put salt on a piece of eggplant, what does it do? It pulls the moisture out. So when you breathe in dry salt, it's pulling out the excess mucus that's in our system. It is scrubbing out a lot of the toxicity that you and I breathe every day into our lungs. A lot of people don't realize, but we take about 20,000 breaths a day. And if you're outdoor or indoor, the quality of the air that you and I breathe in today is what we'll call dirty air. If I were to give you a glass of water that was dirty, would you drink it? Not really. But that's what we're doing every day, breathing in the brake dust, the rubber dust, the ash, the wildfire, the chemicals. All that is outside as well as indoor. So when you breathe it in, it's super absorbent. Another characteristic is dry salt is anti-inflammatory. That's why we tenderize meat and proteins with salt. Well, because it's anti-inflammatory, people with asthma, people with COPD, people that have all types of respiratory conditions is a big deal. So when you breathe in the dry salt, it opens up the airways. Similar like medication does for asthma or COPD, it really opens it up so you are getting more oxygen into your system. Athletes are doing it because it expands their lung volume, and when they can convert their oxygen into the red blood cells, they perform better, they endure. So it's super absorbent, it's anti-inflammatory, and the third is that it's antibacterial, it's antimicrobial, where nothing can grow on salt, right? So salt is one of the purest elements naturally around that we have, and it's been used centuries and centuries. Salt was once considered a very expensive commodity. The word salary comes from salt, where back in the day, the Romans, for example, would pay people in salt, and they made salt coins. But today, it's antibacterial. That's why if something happens to people and they have to get a saline solution in their veins, first thing they do is sodium chloride. So it is basic, simple. It is anti-inflammatory, it's super absorbent, and it's antibacterial. So what it does to your whole breathing and respiratory system is key. There's a lot of indicators that say, from a longevity perspective, from a biohacker perspective, just an overall wellness, that the biggest impact that determines the longevity of your life and the quality of your life is your respiratory system. And often we don't do anything because we're breathing in the invisible. It's only when something goes wrong that we seek medical attention here in the States. But this is also used as a preventative measure in keeping your lungs clean. Think of a toothbrush inside your respiratory system, cleaning all of that out, that you expel out and just cleans you out.
Yeah, that sounds like very good, especially for people who suffer from asthma.
I mean, when you think about when you look at the numbers, and this is what struck me back when I first learned about it, 1 out of 10 people have COPD. I mean, the millions of people that have asthma. Allergy seasons now, because of climate, are extended cycles. We have more dander, we have more pollen in the air, and so our respiratory system starts to wane as we get older. And I'm not talking older age, I'm talking it starts waning in our 30s, where our respiratory system has peaked up, and then it starts to wane. So it's great not just for people that have conditions. I mean, you got a lot of respiratory issues. In addition to asthma, COPD, you got emphysema, you got bronchitis. Kids, when you mentioned about children, especially young children, they are always around germs. I got grandkids, right? When they go to school, someone gets sick, they're always getting colds. Well, this is great for just normal colds where you've got a lot of mucus, you're sneezing, you're coughing, all of that. It helps. A lot of kids are pre-asthmatic, and rather than going to a steroid inhaler, Moms don't want to put those chemicals in somebody, and we've got amazing results for children who can breathe this. It's safe for everybody. There's been a lot of studies, a lot of research that's available from the Salt Therapy Association, where there's actually evidence of the impact that salt therapy makes from young at age, as safe as 6 months old, to seniors with COPD that are in senior living facilities and such. So it really covers the full gambit.
Tell me a little bit about, like, what does the salt cave look like? Because you also make, you say, with the salt chamber, you produce a lot of these kind of.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what it looks like.
Yeah. So basically, the concept is you have a room of different sizes, and basically think of it as a sealed room. You've got 4 walls, a ceiling, and a door. There is a device called the Halo generator, right? It's a salt generator, if you will, Halo. And you put pure grade sodium chloride in it, not Morton table salt, not Himalayan or Caribbean. It's the salt that they make saline solutions out of. It's pure sodium chloride. And the device actually grinds it into a very small aerosol, dry, and it disperses it into a room. So while you're in the room is being filled up with these salt particles in the air, and by being in the room, by simply just breathing, right, you're getting the benefit. What we have done is started to elevate that experience by incorporating salt decor in the environment. So a lot of people are maybe familiar with a Himalayan salt lamp or those types of products, which have been proven to be no benefit for purifying the air or creating negative ions. It's one of the big myths about it. But a lot of facilities will do decor on their walls with Himalayan brick, solid salt areas, salt bricks and tiles. There's rocks like a Himalayan lamp that get put on the walls, maybe on the ceilings. They'll put salt on the floor, and that's more for the aesthetic, making it a unique experience. And when you see the soft glow of lights behind a brick wall made out of Himalayan salt, it emits this amazing, glowing, very soothing ambiance. But that's not needed to make a salt room. It's not needed to be a salt cave. The only difference that people call caves is initially 15 years ago, over in Europe, they were putting salt on the walls to make it seem like you were down below underground in these mines. And so they tried to recreate that. And it was a very interesting kind of look, if you will, right? But all the benefits comes from a Halo generator. If you don't have a Halo generator, it's not halotherapy. And unfortunately, there are some facilities around the country that call a salt room a salt room because they have salt as a decor, but there's no benefit. Without a Halo generator, you don't have anything. So depending on the size of the space, you could be in like a telephone booth back in the day, not to age ourselves, but there used to be these telephone booths you used to go into, and basically you can sit for 10 minutes and get a treatment. In larger rooms, it could be 30 minutes to 45 minutes. Some people are doing large rooms and they're doing salted yoga. People are going into rooms and doing breath work. Many people are familiar with sound baths, right? The Tibetan bowls or that. So there's a lot of folks that are incorporating and layering other modalities together, but their true basis of having a salt room or cave is a sealed room, a Halo generator, and there's some technical things that need to be done with the HVAC system to manage ventilation and the air in the room. And that's basically what's in there.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, a lot of times people do it more for the aesthetics, but you need these actual, I guess, instruments, or you need these actual things to actually make it produce benefits. One of the things that people discuss for adults and children alike is that concept of that it helps some children with sensory issues or anxiety. Why would that be? What is it doing also in relation to that?
Yeah, well, one of the things, because you have salt particles in the air, you really don't want to have any electronics, if you will, right? Those particles are so small, like our hair is about 50 microns in diameter. A salt particle is 1 micron and less. So you barely can see it in the air. Some people think, oh, it's like going into a steam room in this cloud of salt. You don't really see it because the particles are so small, right? And being in a room like that, as you mentioned, like with kids, if there's salt on the floor where it makes it look like it's a beach, there is that texture, there's that sensory. There are people that are going into this, children as well as all ages, where they actually unplug. No screens, you're there focused on your breathing. There's other things that you could be doing. A lot of salt rooms are designed for children where they're basically playing it like in a salt box, like a sandbox. And they're getting the benefit by just being in the room and breathing. Like I said, a lot of adults go in salt rooms and they just kind of chill. It's an opportunity to unplug. That's why some folks incorporate sound therapy, music therapy, guided meditation. So if you can take a half hour to 45 minutes or 10-minute session and just get refreshed during the day or whatever conditions you might have. But it's also, when you mentioned it about the stress and anxiety, when you're able to unplug, when you're able to breathe deep, and you've got these glowing Himalayan salt, it just creates such a relaxing environment. And kids get it really benefit because it's all sensory, to your point. You've got taste, if you will. You'll actually feel the salt on your lips, right? You've got the texture of touch with the salt on the floor. You've got how it looks with our, the sight in our eyes. And if you're playing really interesting music, it just creates all of these senses, elevates it to a whole different level. And people report in their studies about stress and anxiety, and that's for all ages. So there are benefits from a mental wellness perspective as well.
And how soon, or how often should someone use halotherapy if they have certain conditions, and how soon will you begin to notice like you're getting better?
Benefits. Most people actually feel it in one session, to be honest, right? You'll feel the salt. It will, because it's absorbing it, you might, expel some of the mucus. You might be blowing your nose, you might be coughing. A lot of people report that their ears can get unplugged. They sleep better at night because that salt in the system expands the lung capacity. So when you breathe, you're getting so much different results out of how you feel. So a lot of people experience it in one session, but it's really designed also to do it on a consistent basis. It's safe to do every day. There are children who have cystic fibrosis, and it's a very serious respiratory condition. And there are people that do salt therapy every day. When you get into certain conditions, you have to be careful because you can't diagnose and prescribe as a facility unless you're a medical professional. So most people are coming and doing it maybe once a week. There are people that are doing it 3 times a week, people that are doing it on a monthly basis. Some people just go when they have the onset of a cold or certain conditions. But I try to recommend people doing it all the time. Don't wait just when you're sick or feeling things. How do you use it preventively as well? So you will experience benefits right away, and people react differently, right? People react differently to different medications likewise. So by going to a facility and breathing this in and seeing the results on an ongoing basis, that's where people get more educated about it and are doing it more frequently. It's not about doing it longer, it's about consistency over time.
And obviously you can use it for people who are elderly could use it, adults. For children, what would you say would be the youngest that you would permit maybe a salt room? Is there a limit?
Yep. There really isn't. There's really no contraindications other than certain stages of, let's say, lung cancer, or you don't want people going into a salt room with open sores or that are contagious, right? So, if you know what it's like to put salt on a cut, right? It stings. It kind of burns. So, people, even infants, are going into salt rooms with their moms and other, where it's safe for as young as 6 months old, right? So some people have done it even with young children, younger infants, if you will. Especially, there's a lot of snot and mucus and such, but you put it on a very low concentration in the room. So it's not the same amount of salt in the air, if you will, as adults who have larger lung capacity.
And
it's safe for people. It's also safe for women that are pregnant. So there's really not a lot of contraindications. All of the studies that have been around, and a lot of it's posted on the Salt Therapy Association, this has been studied for a couple centuries, if you will. In the 1800s, doctors started to notice the difference of the miners that were working in the salt mines over in Europe. And that was called speleotherapy, where you're underneath in these caves that have a different climate. There's sun's never touched these environments, so it creates a whole dynamic. But the premise of the salt in the air is where halotherapy was born, to be above ground and making it more accessible. So they were replicating to a certain degree what those environments are underground, and it's the salt that is being dispersed in the room that's causing that efficacy, if you will.
And I'm sorry I interrupted before, but no. So but do you think that there are any misconceptions that sometimes people have about it? Are there? What do you think? Or is it clear cut?
Well, I think people don't understand the difference between what this type of salt therapy. I think most people understand that salt is sterile, right? People use salt therapeutically for quite a while. People put salt in the bath. People, it's recommended when you first wake up to drink some salt water, the electrolytes and all of that. So it's not a far stretch for people to understand that salt is beneficial. One of the misconceptions is that people that have high blood pressure, or they are on a low sodium diet, that salt's not good for you. And that's one of the myths. This is the respiratory system, inhalation, very distinct from digestion. And there's a lot of studies out now that determine that United States health, people aren't getting enough salt, right? So there's a whole new studies, if you will, about how salt benefits us, and it's such a natural element that we need, right? We cry tears, we sweat. So salt is very important. But the breathing it in a room is what gets people a little bit, oh, that's interesting. So it is more of an education. I guess the other misconception is about the Himalayan salt on the walls, or that it creates negative ions or purifies the air. That's a big one. And so it has nothing to do with that. It's basically the salt particles in the air that you're breathing.
And what do you think is the future for halotherapy and integrative wellness therapies? Like, do you see this taking off more in the States, at least?
Oh, yeah. I mean, now, it's like anything else. There's early adopters, and then there's later adopters. And it's just now becoming more prominent, if you will, amongst people. We have pulmonologists that is on the board of the Salt Therapy Association. You have respiratory therapists that own some salt rooms. You've got pediatricians and allergists and ENT. So there's more education coming. But, in our society, in our culture, people question supplements and all. But when you start diving into the evidence around halotherapy, the evidence is there, it works, and it's safe. So those are the things. The future of it, I think you're going to see more availability, right? Just like you have all kinds of fitness clubs all over, or chiropractors, or other types of modalities, massage, right? yoga, etc. This is becoming more natural for people to adopt. So I think the future is that more and more people are going to be educated, more and more people are going to practice. Also, I think the quality of the air in our society is getting worse. And as people are living longer, we have more population, you have more technology. You look at what's happening with a lot of these facilities, if you will, that are doing AI, and they have supercomputers, and they have these buildings that are using just the general pollution that we are going to be facing as a society is going to get worse. You saw what happened with COVID. That was a respiratory condition, right? So a lot of people predict that there will be other respiratory issues that we are plagued with, and this is a great modality to stay healthy, and when things do happen, to get well quicker.
Yeah, I totally agree.
You know, you're starting to see salt rooms on cruise ships. You're seeing it in major resorts at the very high end, like the Ritz, Carlton's, Four Seasons, Auberge, JW Marriott's. A lot of them have a spa, and they have a salt room, right? But then you also have the day spas, you have the med spas, you have the yoga facilities, wellness facilities now. So there's a whole mix of the future of modalities that are being more accepted as we go. People love going to a sauna. There's a lot of evidence about how a sauna impacts you, right? Likewise, the more people are understanding halotherapy, the more prominent it's going to become.
And have you seen, like firsthand, I know you say that you've done it with yourself, and have you seen anything very, significant in someone who wasn't doing the therapy before, the halotherapy,
Sure.
and then afterwards, that you could mention?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's thousands of stories around the country where people have this as part of their business that have amazing testimonials. I know for myself, I had cancer 7 years ago, and I had a trach in me for breathing because I had a blockage in my back of my tongue, and that's what radiation was killing. But because of the breathing, I was doing salt therapy a lot because you get a lot of mucus in over. And I experienced firsthand. I get bronchitis a couple times a year, and before the typical times I break out, it accelerates my recovery. I have seen people who have cystic fibrosis who typically have to go into the hospital once or twice a year to really clean themselves out, and people are avoiding the hospitals for a few years now because of it. You have elderly patients who are on oxygen tanks who aren't on oxygen tanks anymore. So you've got the extreme benefits of it, right? And that's all about the respiratory. But what a lot of people don't know is that the dry salt's great for the skin. When your skin's exposed to salt, which is why some have salt baths or being by the ocean when you're in there, it does something to your skin. Well, dry salt is the same. The microns are so small that it penetrates the epidermis, and the same characteristics of being super absorbent is what it does onto your skin. A lot of us have more oily skin, so it pulls that out. A lot of the bacteria that we have comes from being exposed to the outdoors, so it kills the bacteria, right? But also it's anti-inflammatory. And if you ask people who have eczema or psoriasis or acne or rosacea, a lot of the root cause of that is the inflammation that starts to cause breakouts. So we have seen tremendous results for people where the skin gets accelerated in its recovery. Where we see it a lot too is this is safe for animals. There are a lot of facilities that are doing halotherapy for horses. They have tremendous lungs. They are out in the environment. A lot of them are athletes, the thoroughbreds. Some of the top thoroughbreds are doing salt therapy, and they actually can scope inside the lungs to see the lung volume be increased. When dogs, we have a veterinarian that has before and after pictures of dogs that have had a tear in their coat or on their skin, and the acceleration of that. So plastic surgeons and med spas that do aesthetics to our body, to our skin, they have people go into a salt room after their treatments to accelerate the skin rejuvenation. So a lot of people don't know that there's skin benefit. So when you're in a salt room, if your skin is exposed in certain areas, you'll get the skin, respiratory, and mental benefits all at once.
Well, that's fascinating, and that sounds like something I need to do, because I do sometimes suffer from asthma, and it's the worst feeling in the world when you can't breathe. And I think that actually sounds like very legitimate in ways that can suck out the mucus from the lungs and really be helpful.
Oh yeah, and you have some of the top wellness and longevity, biohacking has become popular over the years, about really using the elements and technology to impact our health and wellness. So people like Tony Robbins has a salt room in his home. You got Dave Asprey, who has a salt booth. You have Gary Brecka. So a lot of these people might know that are in that longevity, biohacking, wellness space, right? And so there's so many different ways that people can benefit from it and design really cool rooms. Think of if Walt Disney was around and he created a room that you go into. We have people that do wall murals and create these unique experiences, so people are attracted to being inside these rooms and taking that time out. So it's great for people that have conditions, it's great for being preventative, but it's also something that is not just for respiratory. It's something to go take a 30-minute chill and just go and breathe and do some deep breathing, meditate, all of that. It's great for us.
Well, thank you so much, Leo, for coming on and explaining that. And I really hope that a lot of people take a lot of this serious and this information, as a resource and a preventative measure to actually help themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would say too is that while there are facilities that have salt rooms, there's ways for people to bring it into their own home. For example, there's a very small halo generator, and you sit in this kind of pop-up tent, and a lot of moms and families purchase these, and it's not that expensive, and they have salt therapy in their own home. So if they can't go to a facility, or there's not a facility near them, they can look to see about creating this in their own home or having a mechanism to provide this ongoing. We have a lot of families that get this and do it. So if you're interested, you can check out the salttherapyassociation.org or go to the website of saltchamberinc.com and find out more information about how salt therapy can impact your life and those around you.
Well, thank you. And I'll be putting those links inside of the description for anyone who's interested. So thank you so much, Leo. And guys, don't forget to subscribe to sacredmindshift.com so you never miss another important event or podcast. And thank you, Leo, and I'll see you next time.
All right, thank you.